Hi, my name is Ella Auchincloss, and I'm with Rethink Health. This is a short video series intended to help you learn the leadership practice of public narrative. Our goal for this video series is to help you improve your value propositions, to help you accelerate progress on your initiatives. We will go deeper into some of the work you've already been doing in public narrative by really unpacking what public narrative is, the theory behind it, and helping you develop your own short, compelling call to action. And we'll also coach you on how to coach others in this practice. Before we get started, I want to thank the people who've helped me put this video series together. My colleague Peja Stojcic, whom I think you know, who is recording us now and is currently standing behind a camera in a very contorted position, trying to get this right. So thank you, Peja. My colleague Nina Burke, who helped put the guide together that is a companion to this series, and Jane Erickson, who is so inspired by what she has seen from you all that she asked us to put this together in order to help you go even further in your great work. So what is this series? What's in it? It's 5 short videos. This first video is we're going to be talking about what we mean by leadership and why public narrative is such an important part of that practice. And then we're going to go deeper into what each component of public narrative means in the succeeding videos. And then finally, our last video will be about helping you teach others how to engage in this practice. You will have a participant guide, and in the guide are some suggestions on how you might workshop this material with some agendas and some worksheets. And we will be referring to those worksheets and agendas later on in our presentation. So now to our work. We're starting by establishing a common definition for leadership, and that is this. And remember, this is going to underpin everything else we talk about in these video series. So let's pay attention. Leadership is defined as accepting responsibility for enabling others to achieve shared purpose under conditions of uncertainty. This is a definition of leadership that I learned from my great mentor, someone that I've learned more about than one of the great teachers in my life, Marshall Gans, who learned these practices from his work with people in the South during the Civil Rights Movement, with the United Farm Workers in California and Texas. He then distilled these practices and is now teaching them to some very, very lively students at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. So, leadership is accepting responsibility. Let's unpack what this means. First of all, this idea of accepting responsibility means that leadership in this context is a practice. It's not bestowed authority or a position that someone gives to you. It is something that you claim. It is something that you decide to do in response to an urgent and intolerable situation. And its focus then is not just on you, but on how you develop others to join you in the face of this urgent issue that you feel needs to be addressed. So it's this action of stepping forward. It's this idea of, I'm not going to take it anymore. This cannot stand, and I must do something about it. And it's about being so aware of how your values get activated and in many cases affronted. That is causing you to want to claim leadership like this. So why do we talk about uncertainty? Well, this is a very critical part of the definition, because when times are not uncertain, when we're in a fairly stable time, you don't really need the kind of leadership I'm talking about. You need good management. You need someone to keep the sails trim and keep you on a good course. But when things are crazy, when there's a lot of uncertainty, when there's a lot of fear, that for a lot of communities can pose a lot of strategic and motivational challenges. Groups can become like deers frozen in headlights. It's at that time that this definition of leadership, this kind of leadership, is really, really critical. And I'd like to suggest that the kind of work that you all are doing in the Ventures projects and in other, for those of you that may be watching who's not part of the Ventures project but are participating in multi-sector partnerships trying to redefine the health system, this is the kind of leadership that we need in order to be successful. This is why we feel so strongly that this definition of all the definitions really accommodates the time we're in. A little bit more on uncertainty. I'd like to suggest that even though there may be some sense of status quo instability, though I don't know when it was the last time I actually felt that way about our public life, I'd like to suggest that uncertainty is the new normal. The rate of social and technological change has gone so fast, it's way beyond our capacity to keep up. I mean, if I think about my own lifetime, I was born in 1961. You can do the math on that. And there's been no other time in human history when we've had more change. So let's just take a step back and take that in. There's no other time in human history when there's been so much change. This isn't just my lifetime, and I don't feel old. So imagine that all of our organizations, all of our institutions, they were really created for another time. We're in a new age, and we need new leadership. We need new leadership models that are going to take us into this new place when knowledge is increasing so exponentially. So what are those leadership models? Those leadership models that really formed the foundation of organizations and movements in the 20th century. Well, here are some of them. The first one is the one that is to my left with the dot in the center and all of the arrows pointing to it. It's this model of I'll take care of it. I do a lot of work with volunteer activation, and to me this is the archetypal model of the really confident volunteer who takes everything upon, usually a woman, upon herself, and she is the competent person. She's the person that usually gets it done, and everyone's happy to give it to her. She wants to make people's life easier. It's usually coming from a place of really wonderful intention, and yet it disempowers people. It's not a model that really enables leadership to get developed. Because once that dot in the center, once that really incredibly competent volunteer burns out, as she's likely to do, what happens to that model? Well, it falls apart. Similarly, the one to my right, the idea that we're all leaders. That's also something that's really founded in really good intention. It's the idea that, we want to enable others. We want everyone to be able to have their way of realizing their dream. The problem here is that without a dedicated center, there is no real traction towards a common direction. So the one in the center, the one I affectionately call Hail Caesar, and I call that affectionately, it really is an affectionate term, because it's kind of what we know. It's kind of how a lot of us were raised in institutions. It's a hierarchical model. There's a clear direction. Most people really know what they're supposed to be doing, but it's not an empowering model. And I would like to suggest that it's not a model that can sustain us in the time that we're in. Those little dots at the bottom don't have a stake in the game. So, I've posited a definition of leadership. I've posited some models that I have suggested are not consistent with that definition of leadership. So what is? And this is the leadership model that we're going to be talking about. And this is the leadership model that your story practice is going to, we intend for this model to emerge from your story practice. So what is this model? We affectionately call it a snowflake. This main unit of activity isn't one leader at the center, but the main unit of activity is this team. These arrows point interdependently. So the core unit of activity is this team. They've come together on the basis of their shared values. They've made commitments to one another, and that kind of commitment that they've built amongst each other, they go out and build with others. So imagine this like a big binomial tree that can go to scale. So the critical thing I want you to remember about this leadership model is that it isn't just one leader. It's a core team of leaders, and that they're bounded, that glue that holds this model together is commitment. The commitment that they're making to one another on the basis of their shared values in the face of a huge challenge. They are not compelled in this model. In this model, they choose to be in this relationship because they want to address the common threat together. So then what is the theory of change that's underlying all of the work we're going to be doing in our storytelling? First of all, it's about people. Your people are your chief asset in this leadership construct. It's about recruiting and developing leadership. We want you to know how to tell your story so you can go out and tell it and recruit others and develop their leadership. Why? To build power. We want you to build power and all the resources that comes from bringing all of your people together. Because that's how you will create the change that you want to see. So you're using your power, the power that comes from bringing people together, to create the change that you want to see in the world. So the first question we're asking is not, what's my issue? Okay? It's, who are my people? So as you think about your storytelling, I want you to think very carefully about who is it that you want to share your story with. So that's the first question we're inviting you to ask. Who are your people in your multi-sector partnership, in your ventures project? Who are the people that you really need to recruit to bring alongside you? And how can your story be told in a way that activates them? And we talk a lot about power, and it's important that we unpack what that means too. In Spanish, the word for power, I think, gets, and its meaning gets to what I'm talking about here. In Spanish, the word for power is poder, which has a different connotation. It has the connotation of building capacity. So power in this way means that we're building the capacity of our people to achieve a common purpose. It's not something we have, but rather it's something that emerges from the relationships that we build with one another. So our snowflake is a leadership construct, a leadership structure that's grounded in our commitments to each other based on shared values. And all of this work is adapted from a very rich tradition. These tools have been refined. We are certainly not the first. They have been used for decades. If we had to go back and trace the history of this, it was when people were gathering in homes and churches and felt a threat, felt a psychic threat to their existence. And they told stories in order to enable the courage that they needed to address the threat. And they taught skills. Community organizing is there's a lot of training, there's a lot of skill practice. They taught skills to establish the clarity about how to address that challenge. And there's only one way for you to learn it. And honestly, it's not going to be by watching these videos. It's by watching these videos and really diving in yourself and taking your time with the questions. It will be a very rich experience for you. I really encourage you to dive in, and I hope that these videos will help you. Thank you.